I don't do fireworks. I do fuses, quiet, dependable, meant to keep the lights on. Give me a Saturday trip to the hardware store and a list, and I'll hand you back a life that doesn't rattle when the wind remembers our address. My mother used to say love is a level and a pencil line. Small tools, straight lines, the shape staying true when no one is watching. If there's a romance in me, it's the boring kind that lasts. Sophie said that was what she liked about me. We met in a lobby with too much glass and not enough chairs. She was presenting on brand strategy, and I was the operations guy they'd flown in to convince everyone the budget was real. She had a way of talking with her hands that made the air look organized. Afterward, I asked the question you ask when you're trying not to say the thing under it. How'd you land on those timelines? She grinned and said, the timelines landed on me. I just gave them better shoes. We built a rhythm that felt like a song you don't brag about and never get tired of. I cooked. She plated. She dreamed. I calendar edition. She spilled ideas on the kitchen island like flour. I swept them into bowls and measured what could be measured. We were different in the way that makes people think the universe is thoughtful. When we talked about getting married, she insisted on no paperwork vibes. Her words, I don't want the legal part to colonize the feeling, she said, chin on her wrist at our tiny table. I want a night that's just ours. String lights, friends, vows that don't sound like a contract. The contract part, I don't know. It's Monday energy. Can we save it for Monday? I am a Monday person. Monday is where I live. But I am also a man who knows when to let Saturday be Saturday. We can do the courthouse later, I said. The night can be all feeling. We'll file in the morning. Not the morning, she laughed. Let me have a week where I'm still basking in the word wife without the DMV involved. 2 weeks, I said. I'll even make the appointment. We planned a backyard wedding because the apartment never learned to hold that many people, and the park permit office expects you to love bureaucracy as foreplay. Our friends brought folding chairs, and I brought a staple gun, and together we stapled a memory to the sky. My cousin strung bulbs between the maple and the gutter. Sophie's sister put garden roses in the same mason jars we use for leftovers. Jules, her best friend from college, got ordained online in the 20 minutes between buying a dress and learning a toast. Reverend Jules, she kept saying, like a joke that made her taller. We wrote vows on note cards because we are not the kind of people who pretend they only have one draft in them. Mine were sober and careful. I promised to keep batteries fresh and tempers low. I promised to find you in rooms when they get loud. I promised to be a person you can hand Tuesdays to. Hers were brighter and somehow just as true. I promised to make our house brave. I promised to remind you that a list is just a poem with boxes. I promised to put my cold feet on you in winter and love the face you make anyway. The night was the right kind of small. People laughed in the places you hope they'll laugh. The rings went on like they belonged there. We put our hands on top of each other's on top of a cake that looked like an apology for itself, and we fed each other anyway. When it was time to sign, Jules took out 2 pieces of paper, a decorative certificate with a script font and gold leaf that looked like it had been born to live on a refrigerator, and the county form that looked like a mortgage. We signed the pretty one. The county one stayed in her bag. Let's not ruin the mood with blocks for stamp numbers, Sophie said, later, pressing her forehead to mine under the bulbs. Let's be married tonight. Let's be legal after brunch. I am a man who takes yes where he can get it. After brunch, I said. After brunch became after the campaign launch, became after the Cape trip, became after the rebrand. And the rebrand became whatever comes next when you're the person with the kind of job that turns months into units of content. I would bring it up gently, and she would stroke my forearm and say, "You're so good at keeping track of everything. Thank you. Let's not make it ugly yet." Ugly. The word stung not because I thought the courthouse was ugly, but because she said it like filing a form was a kind of violence. I left it alone because I've learned that pushing a thing into a room before someone is ready turns the thing into a weapon. We lived married. People called us that, and we answered. We made Sundays into a ritual. Groceries, laundry, the calendar review where we pretended our weeks were a cooperative instead of 2 trains trying to share a track. I set up a binder labeled house with tabs in my warped block letters. Rent, utilities, health, CAR, MISC. I put a blank page behind legal labeled marriage certificate and slid a sticky note onto it that said soon. It stayed there so long the sticky lost its stick and I had to add a paper clip, which felt like a metaphor, and then felt too precious to be won. She kept her last name on her email because the brand is built on it, and I didn't take it personally because love is an inside job and signage is for strangers. Once, at a restaurant, the hostess asked, "Two for Mr. and Mrs.?" and dropped my last name at the end. Sophie smiled and said, "That's us." And for 2 seconds I felt 15 years old in a way that wasn't embarrassing. We did responsible things that looked like grown-up photos in frames. Joint savings, a tiny life insurance policy that wouldn't make anyone rich or suspicious, beneficiaries updated at our desks with our knees bumping under the table. To add her to the health plan, HR accepted a domestic partnership affidavit. We're modern. My company bragged on a website from 2016, so I printed it. We signed, and I emailed it like a man checking a small, real box. A year passed in painstaking minutes that somehow also felt like someone had dumped a bucket of sunlight over the calendar. We had fights. We had people over, and then we didn't. We had the kind of flu that makes you remember who you are. We had Wednesdays where the only thing remarkable was that the coffee filter didn't tear. We had content, and we had quiet, and neither killed the other. Then the merger came. Mergers are math disguised as politics. The new company called it a joint vision, which is what you say when you want people to bring enthusiasm to the meeting where you take away their snacks. They also brought a different benefits provider, one that didn't accept domestic partnership for spousal coverage unless a county blessed it with a seal. HR sent the email on a Thursday with the subject line, "Action needed, spousal verification." It was polite in the way a fire alarm is polite. Sophie was on a shoot. I texted her with the screenshot and a heart, and "I'll handle it. Swing by the clerk Monday?" She sent back a voice memo of wind and a sentence about a scarf that made her sound happy. I put courthouse in my calendar and then in hers, little rectangles trying to be an event instead of an idea. I found Jules's bag and the pretty certificate still inside it, slid like a joke between breath mints and a folding brush. The legal form was not there. I checked the drawer with chargers and the dish by the door that pretends to be a bowl for keys and becomes the graveyard for everything else. I lifted the runner on the table and the basket on the shelf and the plant leaves as if bureaucracy might be photosynthetic. Nothing. "We never picked up the license," Sophie said Sunday evening, "the kind of calm you only get to have when you're giving someone else bad news. It's not lost. It never existed." She squeezed my shoulder without looking at my face. I know, you're a legal person. I love that about you. But isn't it kind of romantic that we're married because we decided to be? Paper is such a spectator. Paper is a bouncer," I said. "It keeps a certain kind of chaos out." She kissed my cheek as if I'd said something cute in a language she didn't plan to learn. "Tomorrow," she promised, "we'll make the chaos wait outside." Monday, we went to the county clerk 10 minutes before it opened, like church-going people who like the front pew. The clerk wore a sweater that made the office lights almost kind, and a name tag that made her feel more official than the seal behind her. "Marriage certificate?" she said. "Congrats." She tapped her keyboard, a small percussion under the day. "Names." I gave them. She typed. She frowned, then gave me the smile that means everything is fine unless you were hoping for something in particular. "I don't see a certificate for those names." "We had a backyard ceremony," I said, apologizing with my eyebrows for being the kind of couple that makes paperwork walk around in the grass. "We were going to file later. We need the legal copy now." "Did you file a license at the time?" she asked, voice the kind of gentle that keeps people from finding the button under the counter. "We meant to," Sophie said. "We didn't. Can we get a copy of the thing we don't have?" "You can get a license today," the clerk said. "You can go upstairs to the civil commissioner at 11. It'll be legal the second I stamp it, and the judge says the word no one likes to say loudly. But I can't produce a certificate retroactively for an event the county wasn't invited to." I nodded. My face knew how to be the face you bring to these conversations. Sophie's face knew how to be charming in a small space. "Is there a backlog?" she asked. "I have a shoot. We can be out by lunch," the clerk said, "if you're willing." We looked at each other the way people do when their private idea has just been invited into a public building. Sophie touched my wrist, then pulled her hand back like she'd been burned by good intentions. "Can we do it tomorrow?" she asked the clerk. "I want to wear something that isn't this." She gestured at her jeans as if denim were the enemy of love. The clerk said, "We're open 8:30 to 4:30. On the sidewalk, Sophie looped both arms through mine and leaned her head on my shoulder like we just pulled a prank with God. Tomorrow, she said. Hungry. Hungry, I said, because I had to say something that wasn't the sound of a calendar rearranging. HR's deadline was Friday at 5. Tuesday morning, I put on the shirt that makes me look like I might testify in favor of an institution and texted her a small heart and 11 o'clock. She wrote back, at 10:42. At 11:20, she wrote, parking. At 11:48, she wrote, don't be mad. At noon, I left. I didn't get mad. I got practical. I went to my office, opened the HR portal, and uploaded the domestic partnership affidavit again, hoping the machine would confuse itself into mercy. It didn't. I called the benefits number and talked to a man named Owen who sounded like a person who does crossword puzzles in pen. We can give you a grace period, he said. But at some point we need the certificate or we have to take her off. He didn't say, rules are rules, but they hung there, drying like laundry. That night, Sophie made a show of making a plan. Tomorrow for real, she said, waggling a pen over her planner like the ink could cast a spell. Wear that shirt again. I'll wear the dress that caused the fight at the tailor in 2019. She kissed my temple like an apology when you don't remember what you did. Wednesday, she got called to a fitting. Thursday, the shoot ran long because people are inefficient. Friday at 3, she texted, if I break the speed limit, I can make it by 4:40. At 4:15, HR sent a reminder. At 4:50, the clerk office turned the lights to the kind that tells you the computers are about to become just furniture. I stood on the sidewalk holding a manila folder with a sticky note on the tab. Sophie sent a photo from a car that didn't look like ours. Traffic, she wrote. I'm sorry. The deadline passed. Her coverage ended. We could reinstate it later, HR said, with proof. The word proof is just a mirror. It shows you whether the thing you say you have actually exists. Okay, I told myself. Next week. I put courthouse on the calendar for the following Monday and didn't invite her. I needed information that did not care about charm. The clerk would tell me what steps to take, even if one step was, you need both parties present. I could live with a rule as long as it was an honest one. Monday morning, the clerk with the kind sweater was back. She remembered me, which shouldn't have made me feel the way it did. We can do the license, she said. You both need to sign in person. What if? I asked, putting the sentence down like it weighed a lot, and I didn't want to drop it. We already have a license recorded somewhere else. Could that cause, I don't know, a collision? If you filed in another county, she said, you can't file here unless that marriage is legally ended. The system will stop us. She turned the monitor toward me, a gesture of trust in a world that doesn't give those away. What's the exact spelling on her last name? Some people hyphenate when you're not expecting it. I spelled it. She typed. The search returned no record for our county. Try statewide? I asked, hating myself for knowing that at least some states let you play bureaucratic detective without making you feel like one. She shrugged. Different counties have different systems, she said. But Maple County has a public search. I've had people come in who thought they weren't married because the clerk's office there is fast and quiet. She wrote, Maple County Recorder, online search, on a post-it like a recipe. I took the note to the coffee shop across the street, ordered something I wouldn't taste, and opened my laptop. Maple County's site looked like it had been updated the year Sophie graduated college. It had a box for names and a pull-down for document types and a checkbox that said I agree that I am not using this information to harm anyone. I checked it. I typed her name. I hit search. Her name came up twice. Once on a deed I didn't know existed. Once on a marriage certificate recorded 11 months after our backyard vows. The certificate filled the screen with government exactness. Bride, Sophie last name. Groom, Callum Reyes. Date of ceremony. The Thursday, she said the shoot ran long. Place, Maple County Courthouse, room 204. Officiant, Deputy Commissioner of Civil Marriages. Witnesses, Julia Martin, Jules. Katarina Valles, Kat, our neighbor. The image was small but legible. There were signatures. There was a stamp with teeth. The deed next to it had a purchase price and a parcel number and the words, as husband and wife. The address was a loft on a street whose coffee I know. The date was a week later. My body did a quiet thing, like stepping off a curb you didn't see and finding a second of sympathetic gravity. I took my hands off the keyboard because they didn't know where to go. The barista called a name I don't have and a drink I didn't order. Someone laughed like a human being. On the screen, the seal kept being a seal. I didn't screenshot it. I paid $2 for a certified digital copy because if I've learned anything, it's that truth doesn't mind receipts. The site emailed me a link that asked if I was sure. I clicked yes, and then I clicked it again because the first yes didn't feel like enough. The part of me that wants to make everything orderly took a breath. It began to write a list. Print the certified copy. Look at it alone once. Never again without a lawyer present. Pack a bag without slamming drawers. Put the ring in the dish like it's a delicate thing and not a shackle. Leave the key with Sonia and 2B, good neighbor, keeps mail safe. Water the plant. The plant didn't do anything wrong. There are people who live for confrontation because it lets them be the loudest person in the room without being wrong. I am not that person. I do not trust the version of me that adrenaline writes. I wanted to leave the room like someone who had been invited and was not going to overstay. I walked home the long way through blocks that had nothing to do with us. I unlocked the door we both call ours. She wasn't there. The ring light in the corner looked like a porthole to somewhere I had never been. I put the printed certificate on the table under the decorative one we'd signed with gold pens, so the lie could sit politely on top of the truth for an hour and think about its manners. I packed. Not a lot. Clothes for a week. The folder with boring documents that keep institutions treating you like you exist. The lamp that makes rented rooms look deliberate. The analog clock that ticks audibly enough to let you know you're not dead. I lifted the ring off my finger and set it in the little stone dish we fill with chapstick and pennies. I read the sentence on the house binder tab, marriage certificate, and I laughed once in a noise that changed its mind before it could be a laugh. I wrote a note, not a letter with metaphors. A note that could fit on an index card because the truth doesn't need a stage. The clerk couldn't find us. Maple County could. I won't be here when you get home. This is not a threat, it's a boundary. I will not do a duet with deception. The rent is paid through the end of the month. Utilities are in my name until Friday. I'll switch them after that. The plant drinks on Wednesdays. Talk to me through counsel. I don't trust any sentences we would write in this kitchen. I left it on the counter under the decorative certificate, the gold leaf lie that had been making itself comfortable in our house for a year. I slid my key into an envelope for Sonia with a post-it that said, for packages, because even now I am the kind of person who loves the idea of the right thing arriving at the right place. I texted Eric, spare room? He sent the door code and a joke about how he'd finally get to use the fancy guest towels. I walked down the stairs with one bag and a body that had decided it would rather be tired than noble. I didn't wait for her. I didn't want to watch her shape a story out of a fact. There is a way some people say it's complicated that means help me tie this into a bow you can swallow. I'm allergic to those ribbons now. At Eric's, the spare room smelled like cedar and laundry in the way of spare rooms that have forgiven worse. I put the lamp on the nightstand. It made a circle on the wall that felt like a verdict I could live with. I didn't open the email from Maple County again. I didn't need to admire the stamp to believe in it. She texted around 7. Where are you? Then, we need to talk. Then, you can't just leave. I didn't reply. You can reply to anything. That doesn't make it a good idea. At 9 she called. I let it ring. At 10 she sent a paragraph in which the word context wore different outfits. At midnight she sent please. I turned my phone face down and let the clock do the work. In the morning, I called a lawyer whose name I had in a file labeled for later because I am the kind of man who believes in the category later even when it fails him. He said words like equitable and quiet and consult, and I nodded because sometimes language can hold you up and sometimes it can just keep you from falling too fast. Jules called at lunch. I answered because there is a part of me that still admires the girl who made the air look organized. She was crying before hello. I'm so sorry, she said. I don't know how to apologize to you in a way that matters. You were a witness, I said. It's not on you. I was both, she said. I married you, and then I witnessed her marrying someone else. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Why? I asked, not because I thought why would heal anything, but because my brain needs to put a label on the box before it can put the box in the right corner. She said it was practical, Jules whispered, like the word itself needed soft handling. Insurance. A lease. A thing with taxes. She said it wasn't about love, and I wanted to believe her because the alternative made me a bad friend twice. Practical is a beautiful word, I said, when it's not a synonym for cowardly. I hung up and went for a run. I am not a runner by nature. I am a runner by necessity when my body needs to show my brain a horizon and remind it rooms aren't the only places where people think. I passed a couple arguing about something they would forget, but remember to bring up in 10 years anyway. I passed a father pushing a stroller like a man who had agreed to carry his heart outside his body in exchange for a person who would never call his battery life low. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't know. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again. I answered. Benjamin, a woman said. This is Angela from Maple County Recorder's office. A courtesy call. We received an alert that someone downloaded certified copies of Ms. last name, S records. We just want to make sure the person accessing is authorized. I'm the man who thought he was her husband, I said. I'm not proud of the sharpness, but I'm not sorry either. I'm sorry, she said, and sounded like she meant it in the small human way that isn't a script. If you need to put a note on the file regarding notification, we can do that. No, I said. Leave the file the way it is. The truth shouldn't whisper. You think the story ends there because it feels like an ending, the kind where you discover the wedge that split the wooden thing you were building, and you put down the hammer like a decent man. But endings are just the part where you stop helping the wrong story stay alive. Weeks stretched out in clean lines. I changed my mailing address. I learned how the light falls in a room where no one is waiting for me to take out the trash in a way that earns a thank you. I began to like the small clatter of a spoon in a single bowl on a counter I didn't buy. I bought a cheap plant because I missed being responsible for something that doesn't talk back. I watered it on Wednesdays. Sophie's lawyer emailed mine because that's how people ask for things when they've run out of charm. We divided the small life we had acquired with more care than it deserved and less grief than I feared. I didn't ask for anything I couldn't name without a picture. She didn't offer anything she hadn't already posted. A month later, I saw them on a street I had nonchalantly stopped walking. She wore a hat that wants to be seen. He wore a jacket that thinks it makes the man, and maybe it did. They looked fine. People usually do. She glanced at me, and then at the window glass, and then at her own reflection. He looked where men look when they have not yet learned to hang their heads without being asked. We passed without words, because sometimes the kindest sentence is the one you don't give someone the burden of remembering. When a friend asked if I was okay, I said, I sleep, and she knew what that meant. When my mother asked if I was eating, I sent a picture of a bowl that would have embarrassed me a year ago, and she sent back a heart that meant, I see you. When HR sent a reminder about open enrollment, I checked boxes in a way that didn't require any other person's signature. The relief was not the absence of love. It was the absence of paperwork that was pretending to be love. People want a moral because it makes them feel like stories are instructions instead of experiences. If there is one, it isn't complicated. If someone wants to edit the legal part out of your life, check whether the legal part still exists somewhere, just not where you sleep. Paper is not romance. It isn't a bouncer either. It's a mirror. It shows you whether the thing you say is true in the daylight where laws live. She wanted string lights and vows without formality. We did that. For a night, we were a poem. A year later, under fluorescent bulbs that don't care who looks good in them, a public page told me whose name was written next to hers when it counted. The clerk's stamp didn't break my heart. It held it steady long enough for me to carry it out of a room where it didn't belong anymore. I still believe love is a level and a pencil line. I still label things. I still prefer Monday to Saturday because Monday shows up every week and does the work. I'm not against string lights. I am against pretending that the glow is a sun. The morning HR asked for a certificate, I learned what the string lights had been hiding. And when I turned them off, the room, my life, didn't go dark. It just told the truth.